back to EETV. It's been a few weeks here, but we're glad to do this again. Kind of change the environment just a little bit here, so we can have a little bit of room to spread out. Some of us have new haircuts.
Like it.
Kind of the Arnold and Commando is what I'm thinking of.
He's celebrating Duke Nukem Forever's
That's it.
eventual release this summer.
The barber said I had a perfect head for a flat top, and I still don't know whether that's a compliment. We'll roll with it.
Yeah. Take it. Compliments as they come, I guess.
You can auto-regulate your workouts. You can auto-regulate your haircut. I feel like flat top this time.
That's it.
One of the things that we've had going on here lately, and maybe just one of the few reasons we haven't been able to do the EETV, is we've been wrapping up Efficient Exercises Project Transformation, which essentially was a 10-week project where we took a little over 20 participants through some very minimalist routines twice a week, and we minimally invaded their lives, if you will, with just some dietary guidelines. Keith, what did we give them? We gave them
As far as dietary guideline, what we gave them basically was Rob Wolf's PDF. Just start here.
Yeah, the quick start.
The quick start. Very, very easy. Kick out simple sugars, simple carbohydrates, just the very, very basics of a paleo diet. And really, they're pretty much left to their own devices. Holly L'Italian from Merit Wellness Center was available for some people who wanted to go a little bit more in depth. Some people who may have had a carbohydrate Jones that they couldn't really shake. She was there to help, but for the most part, they were left on their own. Diet-wise.
And so I think that it was successful. We're wanting to implement this again and do this project again with different populations. I think the next one we were contemplating was some competitive cyclists, which you can find around Austin. Again, you don't have to go very far from where we are right now, and especially on a Saturday or Sunday, and see a lot of them out there.
Throw a rock and you'll knock the traffic out there.
So we showed some great benefits with just your a wide-ranging demographic of what you would call just the normal people walking around. We showed great performance boosts if you're talking about just healthcare issues. Some great health-related progress. Now, if we take the competitive cyclist and he trains with us 1 hour a day, I'm sure that these strength gains.
Well, and actually, I think going into the protocol a little bit, we did two. People scheduled for an hour a week, 2 sessions a week. The real work time was probably 15 or 20 minutes.
The work time is minimal.
And I think with the cyclist program, or maybe I just thought this and haven't conveyed it to you, but even once weekly, because a lot of time, you can't convince them. I'm not saying you don't need a lot of miles on the bike and on the saddle there, but even coming in kind of midweek, so that it doesn't interfere with their long ride. Absolutely. So that's kind of what we've toyed around with, is even once a week sessions for these cyclists.
So with cyclists, it should be interesting because there's no actual loading goes on when you're on the bike. I can remember, right? So bone density in cyclists is much lower than you would expect in the amount of work that's being done, just by the cyclic nature of pedaling. You're never the bone loading is just minimal. And also, I wonder if you'll see on our CCT equipment, because cycling is such a concentric only movement, if you'll have a rare instance of these guys on a leg press where their concentric is stronger than their eccentric, which normal populations wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Mechanically at the cellular level to muscular level, that's the mouse, and it's much easier to break than it is to lift. And that way, but cyclists are very strong in just pushing. So you might see that, which would be interesting.
Absolutely. It would be fascinating to see. Mm-hmm. But across the board, I think they will show some vast performance improvements. Mm-hmm. Just from one strength training episode a week, one very short, very intense strength training episode a week.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember some of the highlights, if you will? You had your hands in it a little bit here with the actual workouts. Leslie, thank you, Leslie, had a lot to do with the supervision of the workouts. Really, she was kind of the person to monitor the workouts. But any highlights and anything that you can think of offhand?
Well, a couple, and just looking at a couple extremes, we had some people who came in pretty overweight that showed some dramatic body fat decreases. And again, how much they were in tune with the diet, I really don't know. It's kind of hard to say. We'd have to bring them in, interview them, and ask them, how compliant were they with the diet. Again, 1 hour a week working out, a lot of lean body mass gained, a bunch of body fat dropped. It just a tremendous body recomposition. That's on one end of the scale. On the other end of the scale, we had Brian Barksdale, who came in a lean, very lean guy, and put on a good amount of lean body mass, a real good amount, and dropped body fat. And when you saw him to begin with, you thought, where did he drop body fat from? I mean, from where?
He was already, I think, towards the single digits anyway.
Sure, I mean,
then,
he dropped a good bit of body fat too. And
I mean, I guess even if his body fat total poundage stayed exactly the same with all that muscle gain, then the percentage is going down.
sure,
Right?
yeah.
So,
I don't remember his weight change, but it was, I think, just under 11 pounds of lean mass gain.
Yeah, tremendous amount.
Yeah.
So that was one of the standouts. The other was his fiancee Tracy, who actually wound up gaining weight overall, lean body mass, and she's heavily involved in ballet, and which I love to hold her up as an example to some of my other clients that are scale phobes.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to get on the scale because I might gain weight. Well, that's lean mass, and then we get into the whole body recomposition. Gaining lean mass is not bad. Don't look at the scale. Look, how your dress is fitting, your clothes fitting. Tracy was a great example of that, who wound up going through this whole program with a net weight gain and felt good about it. Really felt good about it.
I think she.
About it.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the weight gain overall, in terms of overall mass, was men, but I think she and maybe one or two other females also had weight gain, and that's something. Men aren't usually afraid of the scale, but women will get a little fearful if they're gaining weight, and that's not what's important. So.
And I think if you ask her too, she's a much better, much more confident because of the strength gains. She got a better dancer because of that, even with the weight gain. So.
I guess some overriding conclusions were that everyone got stronger. Everyone, I think there was one anomaly that the lean mass, and it could have been the ways we were measuring it, but didn't gain. But everyone else, I think, across the board gained lean mass in some very significant amounts. I think our best was just over 20 pounds. I think. I think his overall weight, if I remember correctly, was roughly like 228, and it ended up about 238, and he dropped a significant amount of fat as well with that. So whatever the percentages are there, but I mean, and I think for the most part, I mean, it was people's response was it was simple, not that necessarily it was easy. There's, like Keith mentioned, the carb jonesing, and then also the workouts aren't easy, but once you get the system down and once you get what intensity means, it's fairly simple to keep into your schedule and into your life.
I think that's one thing that I saw, that many people came in having no real clue what real intensity was in a workout, and when they left, most everybody, at least what I saw, really put forth a real good bit of intensity. So that was a big mental jump for a lot of people.
Learning how to turn it on quickly, that was something you have to learn.
You're talking about the hypertrophy.
Yeah, the hypertrophy discussion.
Sure.
I was going to say,
Well, I mean, because you touched on that, and so we got a question where someone was asking about eating to gain lean mass, but doing it in a way. They sent it to you, right?
Yeah. So the question posed to me was, if I eat maintenance calories, whatever maintenance calories is, can I gain lean mass? But the implication being, if I'm going to gain lean mass, do I have to forcefully overeat for that process to take place? I told these guys beforehand, in talking about that, you feel a little bit like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. The bullets flying. There's so many variables to this question. And It just on the hypertrophy in itself, there's a gazillion variables. But the big thing, to break it down to brass tacks, the big thing is for hypertrophy to occur, a stimulus must occur beforehand, irregardless of what the diet is.
Period. Yeah.
Okay, so if the stimulus is there for the body to gain mass, to prepare itself to meet that challenge again and overcome it and survive that challenge, it's going to get those calories from somewhere, whether it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, whether it's forcing that individual, we're talking about if we could control calories at the same level, forcing that person to slow down throughout the day to recover those calories and redirect for another use, the body's going to respond, all things equal. Now, we're not talking about concentration camp diet, extremes, but just assuming that a person has a normal diet, the body's going to respond. So first and foremost, for hypertrophy to occur, a stimulus has to first occur. That's first and foremost. Now, can we affect bulk gain in hypertrophy by force feeding a little bit, eating over maintenance calories? Yes, you can, but it depends on what you're looking for at the outset. Now, if I train hard and I forcefully overeat, then yes, I am going to gain bulk. And this is kind of the empirical thing where, okay, if you're training offensive linemen, you want them to bulk. You want them to train and you want them to hammer down the calories. Okay? So you have a training response, and then those calories, yes, are redirected in such a way as now you're putting on intramuscular fat. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That depends on your goals. Totally depends on your goals. Now, some people would argue that, yes, that intramuscular fat now helps me with my leverage. Okay, so now I have better leverage. Therefore, when I come back into the gym, now I'm lifting heavier poundage. That, in turn, affects my hypertrophy response. So you get kind of in that feedback loop, too. Is there truth to that? Yeah, I think there is some truth to that. And this gets back into the bodybuilding bulk up, cut down phase. And, okay, so at the end of the day, once you bulk up, get 70s big, now you want to cut down and get contest ready. Where did you end up? I don't know. If you had never bulked up, would you end up with that same physique, that same amount of hypertrophy? I kind of think you would. Some people would argue the other way. But I guess you get down to brass tacks of this question is, don't look at it as a food consumption from that end of it, because realistically, you really can't control that. And to think you can, to control the nutrient intake to such a fine degree that you can take in just the surplus 200 calories a day, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can't do it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Give yourself the stimulus, put the input in at the gym, and then let the chips fall where they may. Now, if you want to bulk up, yes, you can take in a little bit more calories, good calories. That would be good. Myself, I drink raw and pasteurized milk usually after a workout, milk and cream. That helps me, number one, in recovery, and I think it gives me a little bit of bulk. Do I think it's affecting my lean body mass so much? Yeah, I could probably drop a few pounds body fat percentages, and I would be right back where I would be if I didn't worry about it at all. So this is kind of an N=1 experiment with me.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was talking about the post, which I did recently, getting into that, but I was looking at other natural bodybuilders who, Lane Norton, who is a pretty successful natural bodybuilder, he went through a period after he got his pro card where he focused on powerlifting. Part of that was because of tear in his pec, but and he's a fan of staying roughly around maintenance body fat levels, and that's while you're in the off season.
Sure.
Not getting super huge, but not limiting calories. So if you could maintain your body fat around what you would naturally gravitate towards, maybe a percentage or two higher, but roughly in that range, it's enough to maintain that much body fat on you, then it's probably enough calories to support muscle growth. Instead of putting on the fat, you would just put on the muscle. And it also gives you plenty of time. You're not so huge coming into contest that you have to, when you're dialing these knobs in to get yourself freaky lean, that you give yourself plenty of time because your body fat isn't in such a surplus. But he's at, sort of up right around where his genetic potential is, or still finding that edge. So he sets a couple natural powerlifting records in the squat and the deadlift. And he comes back in and dials down for a bodybuilding competition, and after 3 years compared to the contest, the lean weight he was at when he earned his pro card, he's only up something like 4 pounds.
Sure.
Right? I mean, and so it was enough to support muscle gain, but not nearly as much muscle, especially at the level that he's at, that you would expect. And so it's, it's a slow process once you're past newbie stage. Brad Pilon of Eat Stop Eat, he did a interview with someone who was talking about, if you're a kid, you grow miraculously if you force-fed calories 18, 19, 20, 21. And then after that, it becomes kind of pushing with a rope. If your stimulus isn't there, you're not doing anything in college. It's like moving weight, watching guys bench press in the gym with a Gothic cathedral arch and the 2-man bench press. It's all you, bro. They're moving weight, but if that resistance is not being moved by the musculature and the muscle isn't responding to it as a stimulus for growth, then you're focusing on an external cue rather than an internal cue.
I think Gary Taubes gives a great example. He's great for giving examples. So he talked, now his is about fat gain, but really it's the same thing. So he's talking about a teenager going through a growth spurt. Okay, the kid's lazy. All he does is eat and sleep during this growth spurt. Now, the kid doesn't back off and think, I'm going through a growth spurt, I better force down the calories to support this. Or, on the other hand, he's not thinking, I really want to grow, so I'm going to force down calories. No, he can't control that. He's hit a certain point, hormones are released, stimulus, he's growing, his body does whatever it can to support that growth. In a lesser fashion, we're talking about the same thing here. Your body's getting a stimulus, you set up a hormonal profile for hypertrophy, and your body's going to respond one way or another. It's going to slow you down over here to rob calories to support that growth, or it's going to give you that urge to eat.
It's an art of any
so it comes back to stimulus, and that's really what it comes back to.
It's like Art put in his DVD, he said, my appetite is a good guide for my caloric demands. And so if you've got your eating, I hesitate to use clean because clean mostly means chicken and rice to people, but if you are definitely reduced processed foods and as a result your sort of blood sugar swings are, non-existent, you're reasonably non-existent, they're not extremes, your appetite tends to be a pretty decent demand.
Sure,
I mean, there are times where I end up fasting for 20 hours and it's no big deal, and there are times where normally I'd eat at 1 just because of my schedule, but 11:30 rolls around and I'm ready to go and where's my food.
Sure,
yeah. So,
and I mean, it's purely, again, an N=1 type of thing, but for whatever reason, if I incorporate any type of deadlift into the routine, I'm very hungry later
total
that day.
Body
It's just it's a noticeable difference on appetite, and I mean, I don't know why, but it's always a deadlift, so.
I mean, that gets right back into one other thing is you're much better off using that mental power that's trying to second guess the caloric intake, weigh and measure, doing all of these things to try to calculate how many calories you need to support that intensity, and turn that back in on yourself and learn to listen to your own body and what your body's asking for. Am I really hungry, or am I just eating out of need to crunch on something? That type of thing. Am I really hungry, or has it been 2 hours and I'm in my old bodybuilding mode that if I don't stay in nitrogen balance, the world's going to go to hell.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to do. Turn that mental energy back on yourself. Learn to listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you when you need to eat.
Well, and I think Skyler had just a beautiful post on his last blog post about somewhat just the journey he's been on, and part of that is I think listening to himself and kind of realizing, hey, this path led to this and this path led to this, and it's all kind of coming back around. I mean, just I guess kind of for those that might not have read it, just kind of
so synthesize. When you are on a glorious summer vacation in Panama and all you can think about is trying to figure out the perfect training routine that will put you on the rails to your genetic potential, you've actually gone off the rails. And so when you get the training equivalent of orthorexia, you need to step back and actually give the long view and use hindsight as 20/20 as it is. So the post is basically saying, hey, look, it was mostly for me. It's like a lot of blogs are kind of note taking for ourselves and hoping someone gets something out of them. It was what am I actually after? Like, I can dunk a basketball and jump really, really high and all that other stuff with minimal training toward that. However, I rarely ever actually play basketball anymore. And in fact, I use basketball just to make sure I can still dunk the ball. So I don't have to worry so much about explosive training or even practicing that skill very much, as long as that metric is met. All these programs are focused on someone else's goal. In other words, you're doing West Side typically, you might be able to tease some ideas out of that with randomness and sort of similar but different exercise, and so on and so forth. But that's really to make powerlifters as strong as possible. Conjugate periodization, West Side, Pendlay hormonal imbalance routines, trying to get people to peak properly. So you go through your journey, and in my case, it was how muscular can I actually be? And then when you start to sniff out what that actually is the case, and if you're young and your frontal lobe isn't fully developed, you go, that's crap, that's malarkey. I absolutely can do more than this. And then you try every training program under the sun, and you realize none of them are magic, just like there's no magic diet, just like there's no magic macronutrient profile or micronutrient profile. And you then start to look at, okay, what do I really want out of my training? What do I like? So if you go back through my blog, you start to see things like, how do I incorporate like a meditative practice into training and so on and so forth. I realized that where I started was in fact all the things I liked, basically good high intensity training, generally slow control. I'm not going to be a power lifter. Bodybuilding probably won't be anything I ever do, but in that, going through all of this informs that decision. It's like, people like to say babies are little Buddhas. They're content and perfect with the world. No, they're totally ignorant to the world, but when you've gone over the curve and experienced everything and sort of walk through the fires of hell, you can be content in knowing that this is the worst that things could be, and be happy, or that the wonders of life are great. And these two states, Ken Wilber, philosopher, tend to call the pre-trans fallacy, tend to look identical. They just do. If you don't know better, they look identical. It's like watching someone work out and move weights as a beginner with decent form versus someone who's been at it 30 years, and you look at those and you go, it doesn't look much different. But the person who's been at it a really long time is much better at putting all that effort into the muscle tissue, making sure the control, limiting extraneous movement, and working out when they're actually capable of being strong rather than going to the gym every third day and making the weight go up and down 10 times because 10 is magic, apparently.
Times 3.
Times 3. That's right, 10 times 3 is magic. So it was that. And then also talking about hypertrophy, there were 3 guys, I added a third later, two natural bodybuilders and Clarence Bass, superstar of aging, if there ever was one. And these guys were averaging 1.5 pounds to a pound and almost 2 pounds of muscle per year gaining past their newbie stage, past Dave Gooden, who runs here in Austin, possibly the greatest natural bodybuilder of all time as far as genetics are concerned. He shrugs his shoulders and goes, I put on 30 pounds over 20 years, just plugging away at it. 1.5 pounds a year. Boy, that's discouraging if you're expecting bulk up mass monster. You can put on 20 pounds, but it's not going to be muscle. And you have to understand, too, that lean mass in studies, I got some studies up on the wall, includes water weight, so it's not dry tissue. If that's kind of the limit of these natural guys, Clarence Bass being another one, he talked about gaining from age 39 to, I think, 45, and put on 11 pounds in that period of time while dropping 1% of body fat. Again, pound and 1.83 repeating pounds per year of muscle tissue gain, and he did hydrostatic weighing at the Lovelace Medical Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so it was as exacting as you can be. And when you start to think of it like that, you start to worry less about, like Keith recovers really well, and he really likes working out, whereas I like putting myself on the carpet twice a week, and then other interests or things I need to read, or in the case of graduate school, I'm not going to have time for those things. So worrying less about finding perfect routine and dialing in the intensity and making sure all that effort's going into the muscle tissue. And if you don't like that type of training, there are other types. Oh no, I thought 30 minutes straight. There we go. That's all right. The screensaver came on. So yeah, I mean, that's the point, is that this is a journey that really only pertains to you. And it's easy to get on message boards and have people who disagree with or think their training program is better. And eventually you try them all and you realize that they might be better for them, but they're not necessarily better for you. And there are some variables at play that are constant, but beyond that, you are in this for yourself, and going through all that makes you a better teacher. Really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, a lot of what we're trying to do is flip that switch,
Right.
internal switch, if you will, within people to. No, that's all right.
Yeah, I'm sending this woman a text.
Oh yeah, no, we can wrap it up here.
I
in just a
got a
second.
few minutes here, sure.
But yeah, I mean, kind of. I don't want to say necessarily some people are born with it more than others. Maybe that's kind of true. I mean, you talk about athletes, and I don't know, but I think there is an art, if you will, mixed with the science to, listening to yourself, what works well for you, and because there are some times when we try something with a client and right away, if someone's kind of tuned in, if you will, they will give immediate feedback like, it's not for me, kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, I've got this stretcher over here that I've been using with people lately, and I've got some clients who, it's like he's 80 years old, and I'm telling him, like, you need this, but we can dial that dosage in. He was complaining, like, oh, I really felt my hamstrings were tight. I'm like, of course they're tight. They haven't moved in 30 years for you, so we need to work on loosening that up a little bit. But, so again, it goes back to what are the variables? The doses are going to depend not only on the physiology, but on the psychology, on the personality, 3 Ps. And some people recover really well. Some people like longer workouts. It's as a business, we focus on brief, intense. But there are some people who they like going to the gym and they like hanging out and they like taking 2 hours to do their workout. Even if the science says, well, you might be compromising testosterone or growth hormone response or what have you, that's an activity they enjoy, and if they are getting the result they want, then more power to them. If they came to me and wanted me to train them, I'd say, my castle, my rules. If you want to do that, you go and do it yourself. But some people like it and they get the results they want, and more power to them.
Well, I guess that's about it for this episode.
We're trying to shorten it.
Yeah, we are trying to keep them
bit.
concise to under 30 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you might have been able to have something that you can take home with you. And we'll be back next time.
Yep.
Adios.